Here's a question for you. What does L on Vel have to do with antiques? You know, back in the last century, the 20th that is, I used to tease about paintings of Elvis Presley on velvet concerning their eligibility as antiques. Well, now in the 21st century, it's a whole new antiques ballgame when it comes to Elvis and antiques. For the time being, you'll have to keep speculating about the role of Elvis in antiques. For now, let me tell you that the king is just one of the numerous examples of the ever-evolving definition of antiques. The role L as the king of retro is for a future segment of History, Antiques, and Loomis. Right now, let's talk about Cincinnati's pride and joy, Rookwood Pottery, which was always highlighted on Is It Antique Yet? Rookwood Pottery, a true art pottery, unlike English Wedgwood or Copeland Spold, was more orientated towards artistic inventiveness rather than profits. Rookwood was founded in 1880 by Maria Longworth Nichols, right here in Cincinnati, and was known for innovative Art Nouveau pieces. Mrs. Nichols was the granddaughter of Nicholas Longworth. Perhaps you visited her grandfather's house, which today is the wonderful Taft Museum. Rookwood was marked on the bottom with a reverse R and P and the flame for each year after 1880 that the piece was made. In 1900, a Roman numeral was added at the bottom of the logo to indicate the year of production. Individually painted pieces were initialed by the artist, such as MAD for Matthew A. Daly, while commercial pieces were not hand-painted and not signed by the artist. By 1900, Rookwood was internationally known for fine ceramics. It won awards at the 1900 Exhibition Universelle in Paris, the 1901 Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, and the 1901 Exposition International in St. Petersburg, Russia. In fact, today, Rookwood pottery is displayed in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, the Louvre in Paris, as well as in the Cincinnati wing of the Cincinnati Art Museum. Now that's impressive. In 1902, Rookwood made architectural pottery called architectural faience, which is a French word meaning earthenware. These pieces were used to decorate homes and buildings. Many a fine old Cincinnati home still has a Rookwood mantle. This division rapidly gained national and international acclaim. Rookwood tiles were also used to decorate the Carew Tower Arcade, the glorious ice cream parlor at Union Terminal, and many public schools in Cincinnati. New York features Rookwood at Grand Central Station, Lord and Taylor, and several subway stops even feature stunning Rookwood designs. The 1920s were highly prosperous years for Rookwood. The pottery employed about 200 workers and welcomed almost 5,000 visitors to Mount Adams each year. Nearly every local bride had a piece of Rookwood pottery among her wedding gifts. Even Mark Twain, who admittedly was not an art collector, visited the pottery, and he went on a shopping spree. I can often tell when appraising someone's antiques what year a relative in the family was married. How? There would be several Rookwood vases or bowls made in the same year, usually the year as the marriage, and were given as wedding presents. The Rookwood, like so many firms, was hard hit by the Great Depression. Architects could no longer afford Rookwood tiles and mantels, and by 1934, the company showed its first loss, and by 1936, operating at an average of just 1 week a month. Finally, on April 17th, 1941, it filed for bankruptcy. Though the company closed its doors, Rookwood pieces remain mighty valuable and have become mighty expensive antiques. Not too long ago, a piece of Rookwood pottery sold for $375,000 at auction, setting a world record for pottery. Now here is the really exciting news. Rookwood has been reborn. A new Rookwood Pottery Company has begun production at 2619 Glendora Avenue in Corryville, and they're making future antiques right there. In 2005, Christopher Rose, president and CEO of the Rookwood Pottery Company, and a group of private investors purchased the rights to the name, trademark, and the original molds from Dr. Arthur and Mrs. Rita Townley of Brooklyn, Michigan, who previously purchased the molds and Rookwood name. Isn't it wonderful that Rookwood Pottery is once again being made right here in Cincinnati and not in some far away land? Mariah, along with Nichols, must be beaming. I brought in some old and some new Rookwood pieces to show you, so let's take a look. And these bookends are called the Rooks, and they were made in the 1920s. And I think that they're the definitive example of Rookwood pottery. The Rooks, the name for the pottery, very, very practical antique for holding your books, and very, very popular, and these date from the 1920s. And then earlier, I was talking about architectural faience. And that's a French word meaning earthenware, as I said, and you spell it F-A-I-E-N-C-E. And I always say, you know, when you want to jazz something up in the world of antiques, you translate it into French. So this plaque is, or should I say plaque, is definitive example of Rookwood faience that was so successful. Perhaps you have a piece like that in a mantle at home. Now that's the Rookwood of the past. These pieces here are the Rookwood of the present, future antiques. This plaque is of what else? Fountain Square. It was just made recently. The beer stein is a commemorative piece, and when you think of Cincinnati, you think of beer, and of course you think of Christian Moerlein. So that is a commemorative piece that's just been recently made for Christian Moerlein beer. It'll hold a lot of beer, doesn't it? Light beer, though. And then on the plaque, a wooden plaque here, you see the logo for the new Rookwood pottery, which is very, very similar to the old Rookwood pottery. I hope you've enjoyed this look at Cincinnati's pride and joy, Rookwood pottery, and I think it's just wonderful that Rookwood is being made right back here in the Queen City where it should be made. Remember, everybody, to be chipper and to keep antiquing.